What's it like to interview Kobbie Mainoo, Manchester United midfielder, and now England as well as of March 2024? Well, first of all, it's good fun. He's a lovely kid and a very talented player. I'm Harry Robertson, a freelance journalist and broadcaster. I've been lucky enough to interview Kobbie several times over the last 2 or 3 years as he's developed into a fine midfield talent for club and country. And it's been a real joy as a United fan, as well as a reporter, to see that progression and development into the player and the person he is. I'm going to talk you through a little bit about that development and what Kobbie's like when the cameras are on and when they're off as well.
Let's begin by talking about what you're doing today.
My most recent conversation with Kobbie came when he returned to the academy recently, just a few weeks ago. He took time out of his day, the day after playing a Premier League game, in fact, away at Luton, to go and visit an under-8s training session during half-term, I think it was. And he went to join in with the session, answer questions from the under-8s, even helped sing happy birthday to one of the kids at one point, very near the end, which was really, really nice. And I accompanied there. We met up in the main reception at Carrington, which is probably most famous for being where Kath Phipps, the famous receptionist, sits, and you may have seen it when new managers arrive at United, new players arrive. There was a recent feature on TNT Sports with Rio Ferdinand and Sir Alex Ferguson chatting to Kath in that main reception area. Me and Kobbie met there, and then we made the short journey as he returned to the academy. I say returned, but it's really not that far. There's a symbolic kind of curved walkway that adjoins the first team building at Carrington and the academy building just over here, probably 40 or 50 metres long. And there's glass panels on either side of that walkway that carry a bit of the details of the history of the Manchester United Academy, founded way back in 1932 with the A-team, and then the Manchester United Junior Athletic Club in 1938. Long time ago, 90 years plus, and it carries details about that history, but also it has the name of every academy graduate. Kobbie's name will be added to that soon enough, along with other recent graduates like Dan Gore and Charlie McNeil, Amari Force and Willie Kambwala. We strolled along there. Then we went into the academy building. When you arrive in the academy building, one of the first things you see, apart from just the big academy sign, is quotes from Sir Matt Busby. A fantastic one which says, at Manchester United we strive for perfection, and failing that, well, something along the lines of failing that we'll have to settle for excellence, which is something that sums up what I think the attitude at United should be. We should always follow the words of Sir Matt Busby. Kobbie and I then walked along the corridor at the academy, where either side you've got a whole load of dressing rooms for teams right through the age groups, and also for visiting teams when they play at Carrington, and the referees rooms and the physio rooms. And along the walls of there are past graduates, including some of the first team like Marcus Rashford and Johnny Evans and Scott McTominay, but also Bobby Charlton and David Beckham and Danny Welbeck, I think, is on there as well, Jesse Lingard, many others. And I said to Kobbie, are you gonna be on that wall one day? And he said, I hope so. But there's not much space. They're going to have to find room for him and Alejandro Garnacho if their progression continues in the way that it is now. I said to Kobbie when we were walking through the corridor, does it feel weird to be back here? And then we both realised that he told me it's not been that long, and it really hasn't. I think he found it quite strange because it's all a big deal, and to come back, and the under-8s were so excited to see him. But Kobbie was only an academy player months ago. He's only moved over to the first team building months ago, not years. So he said it did feel a little weird, and I got that impression. I thought what was really nice, and I don't think this was captured on camera. So one of the coaches said, are you going to join in a training session? He'd agreed to go and do a Q&A, but he didn't necessarily have to join in the training session with the under-8s or play in their little friendly games that they were doing. And he said, of course. And I said, how was the game against Luton yesterday? He said, really tough. And obviously Kenilworth Road is a tough place. It was a tough game for United. They went ahead early on, but then were pegged back and had to defend very resolutely towards the end. He said his legs were a bit weary, but when he was asked, are you going to join in the training session? He said, of course. And I was like, yeah, I like that. And he said, I've not kicked a ball yet today. I thought it's always comforting when you hear footballers state how much they love the game, because you always want your players to really, really love the game and appreciate what they're doing. And Kobbie right now is living the dream, and it's clear that he appreciates that. Kobbie was actually a bit early for the training session. The under-8s were watching first team training, and they still had 10 or 15 minutes left of that, so they hadn't come over yet, which gave us a great opportunity to chat about a few things. I told him that I'd been at the away in the Galatasaray at the Ali Sami Yen Stadium, and said it must have been two places to go: Goodison Park, just after they got the points deduction, and then Galatasaray as kind of your first two big games after he'd come back from injury. Of course, he made his debut long before against Charlton in January of last year, and he said, yeah, it was very, very intense, and it's nice when you get to chat to players and ask them about what it's like to play at those grounds. Old Trafford is always brilliant to hear what people think of Old Trafford, but he said Kenilworth Road was tough. He said Goodison was intense. He said his favourite was Galatasaray, and that every time you got the ball, you could feel the pressure with all the whistles, and then as soon as you gave away the ball, it would go silent first, and then the Galatasaray songs would start up again. And that's certainly what I noticed in the away end. But I remember watching when Kobbie came on there, and seeing this young kid who I've watched come through the ranks at United, and seeing the belief he has in his own ability, and the way that he was. There was one moment, and I said this to him, I think it was on the left wing just inside United's half, where he I don't know whether he 180 spinned someone, or it was some kind of great skill. I remember watching that and thinking, yeah, this kid's got it. There's a kind of unexplainable thing, like he looks United. He looks ready for United, and Kobbie showed that in the game at Goodison, and then at the Ali Sami Yen, and he was pleased to hear that. And yeah, he loved those games. We chatted about plenty in the interview overall, and some of the questions from the under-8s were fantastic as well. To them, he revealed that his idol when he was growing up was Ronaldinho. I think you can see that in his quick footwork and the way he kind of likes to manoeuvre the ball, which is fantastic. Ronaldinho is a great idol for anyone to have. He called Casemiro his teacher. He thanked Erik ten Hag for the way that he's pushed him ever since he came into the team, which I thought was interesting. I remember Ten Hag saying at one point that he wanted more. He was demanding more from Kobbie, and I said to him, what did that really mean? And he said in training and in games, he wanted him to demand the ball more and more and more often. I think that's something we might have seen with Amari Forson as well, actually, when you've watched his recent games back down for the under-21s. In terms of what Kobbie was like as an interviewee, as a person, well, you've got to remember he's only 18. And as I say, I think he did find it quite weird that it was kind of a big deal for him to go back to the academy building. But he very much, we try to keep things as relaxed as possible, rather than sitting him down in a studio with bright lights shining in his face. Just a kind of casual chat while we walked towards the academy building, and then we sat on one of these kind of triangular prism things that say academy. And he said, I used to sit on these all the time. I said, are they comfy? And he said, yeah. We sat on them and had a chat while we watched the under-8s, and he relaxed, and he's confident, he's polite. There's a quiet confidence to him. He's humble, but you can see when you chat to him and in the way he conducts himself, there's that real drive and ambition and determination. But it comes across very quietly, and it's actually something similar. I've got a quote here from United under-21s coach Travis Binion, who was also Kobbie's coach in the under-18s when they won the Youth Cup a couple of years ago. He said something similar. He said he's confident, quiet, and he thinks about things all the time. He called it a quiet assuredness. I thought that was a very good phrase. I first interviewed Kobbie when he was 16 in 2022, on midway through the FA Youth Cup run, and back then he was quiet, and those interviews, he did few of them actually because he was playing a year up. He was a first-year scholar, unlike Alejandro Garnacho, for example, who was a second-year scholar at that time. So Kobbie did not quite as many as some of the other members of the squad. It was about easing him into that experience. And interviews at that age have two purposes, really, for the players in the FA Youth Cup squad or UEFA Youth League or under-21s, under-18s, whatever. One is to let fans have an insight into those players and their upbringings and what they're like and what they think about their game and all of that. And the other, probably bigger for the academy and the club and for me as a reporter doing them, is to help those players get used to the experience so that it's not all a big shock when they get into the first team. And so it's very much a chance to mess up, to do retakes if necessary, for me to repeat questions if necessary, and to give some feedback on what I think is probably underappreciated. It's a skill. Doing interviews, being an interviewee, can be difficult for certain players, particularly quiet ones. Kobbie was not really quiet. Some players are naturals. Willy Kambala, an absolute natural. He was very nervous before doing his interview, but he's a natural. He was incredible. Not many players are like that. Others are really nervous and will just respond with a few words, a sentence. That's fine. They're getting used to it. That's fine. Kobbie was neither of those things. He wasn't a natural, but he wasn't messing about. He took things seriously. He was calm, and he stumbled over a couple of words, but he very impressively described the excitement that comes with making a first appearance at Old Trafford, which he'd done in the FA Youth Cup that year. I then spoke to him a few months later after he'd won the Youth Cup. This would have been November 2022, just before he started getting involved in the first team, when he went to the mid-season training camp in Cadiz. He scored against Cadiz in that mid-season friendly. And by that point, he was a real example to the rest of his teammates. He carried this kind of natural air of humble confidence, which I think I've seen again more recently. And yeah, those characteristics very much were on show again for his first major interview. And he began to relax as it went on, which is always the kind of goal as an interviewer. And I thought there were some parallels to actually his performances in the first team, because I remember watching his debut against Charlton in the Carabao Cup back in January 2023, and he was tidy, solid, some nice passes, but relative to his quality, it was pretty timid, I thought. And there was that sense that there was something still to come. He was holding something back, and I think we've now seen that something. There's this kind of veteran-like composure, some incredible footwork that gets you off your seat. I mean, that Wolves goal, for example, off your seat moments, the quick feet, effortless control, and some really good passing ability as well. It does feel like he's showing something extra every single game, every single week, which Dave Brailsford will like, marginal gains and all that, 1% more every week. I think the same will be true in his interviews, and was true over the course of these few interviews that we've done. I think his true kind of vibrant, confident character will come out the more and more he does these, like it's coming out in his football as well. If he continues to make his mark on the pitch with the first team, he'll no doubt grow into a leader in that team. A quiet leader. I don't think he's never going to be a big shouter, but someone who leads by example and demands the most from their teammates as well. One thing that really came across, he clearly loves the academy. I really like the way he spoke about playing at the Cliff, United's old training ground, when he was younger, which the younger academy players do. He said something like there was a really rich, deep history to that place, and the coaches made sure they were aware of that. And I think that's something, the coaches definitely try to do it, but I think it's something that a lot of players might realise in their late 20s or early 30s, but to realise that and mention it and bring it up at the age of 18, I thought showed a lot of just maturity, which was good. The academy are really proud of how he acted on that day and how he acts all the time and what he's doing. That much is very, very clear. He's been rated very highly at the academy from a very young age. A recent Athletic article talked about how Manchester City see him as kind of the one that got away, and they tried to prize him away from United a few times. He did train a couple of times at City's kind of development centres. He was training at United and City at the same time, which a lot of players do at 7, 8 or 9, and then they have to pick one. Kobbie was born in Stockport in Cheadle Hulme. He started playing properly at Cheadle and Gatley FC. He was only 4 then, and was pretty immediately bumped up an age group, which does happen for talented players, but was a sign of what was going on. And something similar happened when he joined United. He was often playing up an age group all through the ranks. Of course, in the FA Youth Cup, for example, he was playing up as a first-year scholar when that tournament is for both age groups, but more naturally you'd play in your second year as a scholar. He then played for Failsworth Dynamos. There was a good quote from his coach there who talked about him being all tricks and skills rather than passing. And I remember, first of all, his idol was Ronaldinho after all, so it's not a big surprise. But I remember when we were sitting down and watching the under-8s game, I said, "Do you remember being like this age?" And he said, "Yeah, I remember being exactly like these kids, just dribbling and doing skills and shooting all the time and not passing to anyone." Now you see him play, of course, and he's a great passer of the ball. It's one of his great traits. So, all players at 7 or 8 just dribble. It's only normal. He joined United pre-academy from the age of 6. He signed at 9 properly. That's when young players are allowed to sign for academies in English football. And it was very clear from very early on how highly rated he was by United. United have a scheme called the Manchester United Schoolboy Scholarship Scheme, effectively where they take players who they think are talents and put them into a school that have an agreement with the club. So that allows them to balance football and education best, make sure that both school and football club are working together, rather than sometimes if the school doesn't have a link with United, it can be a bit harder for the player and the parents and the teachers as well. That's normally been at Ashton-on-Mersey School. That's also with Manchester Grammar School now for United as well. Players generally sign up to that scheme or get put into that scheme at 13, 14, 15. United put Kobbie into that system in year 7 when he was aged 11, which was a lot earlier than most other players. Marcus Rashford did the same, but Nick Cox very recently said, the director of the academy, they are the exceptions to the rule. And Nick Cox said in an interview with United Review, United's matchday programme, that they had a hunch that has very much come true. By being part of that scheme from such a young age, the academy were able to kind of help Kobbie develop as much as possible, give him all the right experiences, but also protect him a little bit from the fame that kind of grows and grows as you grow older in the United academy. Obviously, there's lots of interest in it from fans and people like me as well. I've always been very interested in the academy as a fan. When I was chatting to Kobbie at the under-8 session, Nick Cox came down for a little catch-up, and I asked him after, what were you and Kobbie talking about? And he said he was showing him on his phone some pictures from a tour that I don't know what age group it would have been, under 13s, 14s, I can't quite remember what he said, a tour in Dallas in the US, and there were pictures of them like eating burgers and ice cream, and they were reminiscing about that, and Kobbie said it was one of his favourite memories. And that's often what you get with academy players. They don't talk about the specific matches. Sometimes they talk about winning goals against City or Liverpool or Leeds or whoever, or in a big tournament like that, or a penalty shootout or something. But often they talk about tours and just being with their mates in a way. And I think that's one of the really nice, I love that kind of stuff. I think it's one of the great things that United do. Nick Cox's big mantra that he speaks about often, and whether in interviews with me or other people, is about maintaining a childlike experience, and that's clear that happened with Kobbie. Of course, keeping things childlike is a lot harder when the player is suddenly playing in front of 75,000 people. That's a very difficult challenge, and probably an insurmountable one, but you do try to protect them, and United have tried to shield Kobbie as best as possible from all that pressure. For example, as I said earlier, our interview was deliberately kind of timed with this visit back to the academy with the under-8s. Rather than putting him in a big studio with lights, it was kept as a kind of casual conversation, and a walk and talk, and then sat down, and just a couple of small cameras filming from distance, and the camera ops, Holly and Andy on this one, did a great job at that, as they always do. As for the on-pitch stuff, it's been recently, it feels like a very big rise, but actually if you look at it, it's been slow and steady. So the UEFA Youth League is a really good example of which players are most highly rated at United. So the best players at United's academy will generally get the opportunities in the kind of highest value competitions, so the Youth League and the FA Youth Cup. The league schedule is a bit different, but it was slow and steady. So Kobbie travelled with the under-19s in the UEFA Youth League a couple of times, but as an unused substitute, then came off the bench, then had a start, then a couple more starts. In terms of first team training, he went in kind of intermittently as a first year scholar just a couple of times, then as a second year started training a lot more regularly, and then of course every day from a certain point. And the Youth Cup was the greatest challenge, with 67,000 people there for the FA Youth Cup final. That was incredible, and it was I remember having not worked with them, but having interviewed these kids, 16 and 17, and seeing how excited they were, the way they were speaking about it, almost all of them, I think, United fans, speaking about that opportunity to play at Old Trafford in front of so many people. They were so excited for it. They were absolutely buzzing. And it was great to hear, but it meant, I remember sitting there, I got to Old Trafford about 3:00 on the day, and I was watching like the groundsmen go about their stuff. I remember the players arriving in their blazers and walking out and seeing the pitch, and I was really nervous for all of them. And then you're also, as a kind of journalist and writer, you're looking to see how they'll cope with it, as I'm sure as I know the coaches and analysts will be doing as well. And yeah, he coped very well, and Garnacho, of course, did fantastically as well. And you knew then that, I think we probably knew already, but these were the kind of two gems in a very good generation. And there are players in that Youth Cup team who may still make it United as well, and most of that team will have very successful careers across the football pyramid in England or abroad. He's at Cantonara, for example, has gone to Werder Bremen now. Dan Gore's on loan at Port Vale. But yeah, Kobbie and Garnacho look like the gems in a great generation. Now he's in the England squad. It's fantastic. It's been a long journey there, and he looks buzzing in the photo. And yeah, I'm really pleased for him. I'm sure he'll take it in his stride, and yeah, good luck to him. That's all for now. If you've enjoyed this, you might like my weekly newsletter on Substack. There's a link to that in the description below. You might also like to do a weekly Manchester United podcast, inventively named the Manchester United Weekly Podcast. Link to that in the description below. And yeah, cheers all, and have a great rest of your day, and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more videos like this. Goodbye.